Good morning, everyone. Well, morning here in France, and it's another very bright. It was a very cold day. I think it's 2 degrees, and I'm probably looking a bit sort of. I might be looking hot and sweaty because I've just finished a training session on my bike on a turbo trainer, which is actually hard work. I mean, cycling can be hard work, but there's something quite intense about being on a turbo trainer. But I want to keep that cycling fitness that I really gained while I was in India. And I'm going to say more about fitness and health in a later session. But I do subscribe absolutely to the fact that one of the beliefs of excellence on the presuppositions in NLP, which I've referred to in previous recordings that I've done, is that mind and body are one. And I do feel that health and fitness at the moment are an advantage. So I was listening to the reports of and the videos of the clapping that people did, the cheering that they did last night in the UK at 8 o'clock, just as you did in India. You all celebrated or thanked all the frontline workers simultaneously. And so they did the same in the UK. It was interesting as well. Interesting how people's unique and sometimes hidden talents are emerging, which was one of the things I was talking about in the first session. And apparently Alistair Campbell, who was an assistant to Tony Blair when he was the Prime Minister, he walked down his street playing the bagpipes. Well, who knew that Alistair Campbell played the bagpipes? I mean, I think that would have put a whole other perspective on him as a person if more people had known that at the time. So it's interesting that this time is creating a different kind of space for people, for their talents to emerge. I can see I'm going down this track, which wasn't one I planned to go down, but I'll just pursue it for a moment. A very good friend of mine, Yumi Sim, who travels the world playing the violin. She was a very good, we kind of lived very closely at one time, let's say that. And she's a remarkable violinist. That was a talent that emerged that she didn't totally subscribe to at first. She wanted to be, I think, a fashion manager. And now that she's in lockdown in New Zealand, she recorded herself playing the piano. And I never heard her play the piano. And it's just beautiful. I think I'll have to put some of these links to what people are doing that I refer to. And that's another example. Anyway, back to the clapping last night. And we did similar here in France. So the other evening, all the church bells rang out at, I think it's 7:30. And I could hear them in the distance. One of my friends here, who's actually living in the village, recorded. He was much closer to the church bells, and he recorded it in this, and showing the image of this very empty, this very deserted, sort of tranquil village, and the church bells ringing. And people commented, even whether they could hear them or not. It was not a lot of point of us standing at our doorways and ringing bells because we're so distant from each other. So in different ways, some countries like India, like the UK, like France, have found ways to simultaneously come out and make this gesture as a thanks to the frontline workers, all the people who are putting their lives at risk to do what they're doing. I mean, just remarkable. And more than that, I think what it is doing as well, it's very moving, I find, to see those scenes and to hear those sounds simultaneously. When we do that, we connect with each other. And I don't know whether it happened, with what you heard with the sounds, but there is a likelihood that in time that they would all clap together that they would ring their bells. There would be a rhythm. It was noticed. I remember seeing a film a long time ago about children playing in a play yard, and there was a rhythm. You could almost put it to music. There was a rhythm to their play. And so it's a way of connecting. I'm always moved by the sound of the calls to prayer when I'm abroad in the countries where they do that, or for example in India when the bells ring. Sometimes it's irritating when it's very, very early in the morning. But nevertheless, it's very moving because it calls us to unite. And that creates a very, I believe, a very deep sense of rapport, which is about connection with each other. And that's another topic as well. So I have drawn on, and I do draw on the beliefs, these beliefs of excellence. And they're very interesting because I was talking about in the first session about intervening with ourselves at the level of purpose, because it takes us beyond ourselves. It's a way of kind of letting go of concerns about self, going beyond egoism and considering our legacy and what we're here for and what we can be here for. And another area they're all very powerful. Another area that's very powerful are these beliefs, because beliefs aren't factual things. They're ways of thinking, they're things that we develop often very early on in life. And so a belief that I referred to in the first recording was that there's an unconscious positive intention behind, what's happening in the world behind this virus. Of course, it isn't, but it's a way of thinking about it, and it is serving a purpose. And people are talking about the good that's happening along with all the sadness and all the fear at the same time. And so they're not, in the second recording, I talked about the meaning of the communication is the effect, meaning, and that's very powerful. It means that instead of, for example, let's say, blaming other people or being disappointed in other people because they haven't understood or related to us in the way that we wish to, it's about saying, well, that's feedback to me. That's feedback to me about how I'm communicating, how I'm expressing. And in that second video, I was talking about how we ask for what we want, for example, especially in times like this, where maybe the style of asking is different to when we're in a kind of relaxed situation where the outcome is negotiable. And the point about these beliefs, because I often find that when I am exploring them with a training group, that people go, but literally, if I say, well, there's an unconscious positive intention, we can choose to believe that there's an unconscious positive intention behind that person's behavior towards me. Not that it's in their thinking, it's just assuming to think that way. So the beliefs affect, and sometimes people argue factually, if I say, well, there's a belief which is that if somebody can do it, anybody can do it. And I remember being in an interview a long time ago, and the interviewer said, so if you believe that you can, do you think you could believe that you run as fast as Linford Christie? Do you think you'd run as fast as him? And he was coming at it from an intellectual point of view, from a factual point of view. That's not how they work. They work if you go along with them. It's like, go along with them. Go along with this way of thinking. Go along with the way of thinking that there is no failure, there's only feedback and learning. Go along with the way of thinking that the meaning of the communication, the meaning of your communication, the meaning of my communication is the effect that it has. Go along with the way of thinking that there is an unconscious positive intention behind things. And if it works for you, now what does that mean? If it gives you a way of being or a way of feeling that is good for you, that gets you into a balanced state, that gets you into a congruent place, then great. That's what they're for. It's the result that they achieve that's important, not whether they're factually correct, because they're not factually correct. So this being prepared to go along with things, try things out, and I find that approach to learning particularly prevalent in India, partly because there is such respect for teachers in India that you don't challenge a teacher. Now, you might say that's not a particularly healthy thing, but people do challenge from the point of view of understanding, but they wouldn't typically come from a cynical place, which is much more likely to happen. And if I were teaching a group of strangers who hadn't perhaps been prepared for a training group, people to whom I was expected to sell the idea of NLP, to which I avoid if I can. They're not the people I particularly want to teach. They're more likely to be saying, surely this NLP thing work. I do find it amusing when people say to me, well, does this NLP really work? You think, I spent over 30 years working with this. Do you honestly think I'd be doing that if it didn't? Well, I suppose if I was a complete charlatan and only did it for, let's say, the money, then yeah, they could be right, maybe, but no. I've dedicated so much time to it because it works for me. And I've seen it work very, very powerfully for other people, for people to find their talents, people to discover their purpose, people to find a way of finding the resources within themselves. And that's another belief of excellence, that we have all the resources we need within ourselves already. That we don't need to be told everything, we don't need to rely on other people. We can, of course, ask for help, but we do have the resources within ourselves. And the opportunity is to find how to tap into them. So back to the connecting, because it's a very natural thing to connect with the rhythm of what's happening around us, which is why it's so important to spend time with people that you value and that you admire. And I really hope if you're in lockdown, you're with people that you value and admire. And if you don't, then find a way to value them and admire them, because it's going to make life a lot easier for sure. So we're naturally drawn to a unifying rhythm. And it's interesting that in a way that's what's happening the world over at the moment. And that really is a very big part of what Rapport is all about. And one of the things that I think people are often surprised at when they do, if I think about the groups that I taught in India this winter, I would say that they had profound connection with each other. We all had a profound connection with each other. And that they probably wouldn't have expected that. They might have come along expecting to learn techniques, which are fine, but it's really not ultimately what NLP is about. They may have expected, to get a lot of information, but what they got was this profound connection, as well as many other things. And that gives us an influence on ourselves and other people that goes beyond what's possible individually. And actually, for that reason, and the other thing that contributes to that is the fact that we work real time. We're working in the moment. If we're doing things, for example, if I were teaching sessions that had been scripted before, that I'd said many times before, in a way, I'd be out of sync with the rhythm of what's happening in the world. So one of the things that I seek to do, and with Ramesh, who I've run those programs in India with, what we seek to do is to really connect with what's happening right now with the people in the room that we're in, or wherever we are, which might be on the beach doing yoga, or that we connect with what's happening with ourselves, with the people in the group, with what's happening in the world. And that real time, and that's what we encourage people to learn to be and to learn to do. And being real time, we engage with the rhythm of the world. That's really, for me, what rapport is all about. And I'll say, when I give these sessions, I'm sure it raises for you. It raises a lot of questions for me too. There's a lot of learning in this as I speak things out, which I will pick up and follow through in other sessions, in other recordings. And do feel free to give me your feedback and your questions, and then I'll find ways to respond to those in a subsequent recording. So better go and sort of well, stretch now, because that's important after exercising on a bike like that, and load up a bit with food and drink, and just have a pause. So I hope that your day is special, that you will feel the strength of all the people to whom you are connected, and that you are learning in all of this. And be interesting how we're speaking, on the other side, so to speak.